So yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your invite and your opportunity to talk about this. And it's something that I like to say we practice this, probably do more preaching than practice. I'd also say from the beginning, these are sort of my thoughts, not necessarily the hi Damien, hiya, not necessarily the accounts of NFU Mutual directly, although a lot of this I build into the way that we try and think about things. But I've put down sort of in words, sort of a way of looking at this. Do you want to do the next slide then, please, Jeffrey?
And then I'll try to do that, David.
Yeah, let's see if it all works. I like the everything counts, but not everything that counts can be counted. Came to mind quite a lot, often attributed to Albert Einstein, but I know differently. It's someone a lot longer ago said that. And then I thought I'd also put in there about a little tester, but I'm not going to make this interactive, don't worry. But very quickly, who also said everything counts in small amounts back in 1983?
Depeche Mode, David, was it?
Oh, well done. Well done. 10 points to Mr. Paul straight off the bat. But don't worry, you won't be asked to do any more interaction. I'll just start to get going. So there's lots of things going on here. There isn't one answer to this. There's lots of things. So I've tried to break it down into a way that is meaningful for you. And it's where, as a technical fraud manager, how do I ask my teams to think about when they are weighing up the cases that are put before them? And there's a number of things I've just asked you to think about. As I say, they're not the views of the NFU Mutual directly, but obviously I influence. These are my thoughts about how I believe we should be doing things. Fraud decisions are often made in uncertainty and are often incomplete, but they do more and more reflect business challenges we have. I mean, we are a business. We are not. You'll see it in a further slide. We are not an authority invested in stopping fraud, although we have obviously a financial conduct to do that to some extent. But we do have to make sort of moral judgments and also business judgments as well, which is quite difficult. We're balancing obviously the regulatory requirements with doing this, but also acting fairly with our customers, not throwing good money after bad, things like that, quite obvious stuff. And there's a whole spectrum of fraud here that's at play, from the grey to the not so grey to the downright fraudulent. And we have to balance all of that with the resources we've got. There's also a strategic approach with a lot of this. So sometimes might sound silly, but sometimes we not like to lose cases, but sometimes we know we're going to lose a case. So it might be, why are we running this case? Because there's a bigger picture at play here with Jeffrey alluded to just before we started talking about linked and organised. And there's a strategic approach to, sometimes we're going to court to find some stuff out. So there's lots more going on here than just straight, it's a black and white fraud going on. We have limited investigative powers, simple one. We can only do so much with what we've got. You'll see it more. I'll balance it. I'll explain more in more detail, but there's commercial business constraints here. I only like to work 9 till 5. Don't want to do weekends anymore like I used to back in the olden days. And most of the team are of the same. We only have a limited resource to do that. We have to prioritize this thing called strategic case prioritization. We have to look at our cases and work out which ones are the ones we really want to focus on. And then last but no means least is a risk management approach to all this, framed within. We have to sort of look at how much we do things a bit like the law enforcement do. The law enforcement, I know IFED don't take every single case we send to them. They have a matrix that says they'll take some but not the other ones. And then we have to have the same, what's our risk framework for this, for looking at these cases. Next slide, please, Jeffrey. So I'll start off with the big one that I like to go on when I'm asking about, why we take cases. And we have a lot of ex-police, particularly in our intel team, and they find it really difficult to adjust to commercial world, the sort of civil claims as opposed to criminal claims. We are not the police. It's as simple as that. Is a simple one I go on to. Our fraud ambition sits alongside our running a viable business, which is really what this is about. So we have to be clear to our people what we're trying to achieve. And one of the things we said is, look, fraud is really important. Yes, we want to fight fraud, but it isn't everything that we do. We have to take into account other factors as well. So I'm going to run through some of the reasons why, why we might take cases for fraud and why we might not. There are, I've been at an event where there have been police, and they will often admit that they're not able to. I think a phrase Tom Hill once said to me, he was ex-head of IFED, we can't arrest our way out of the problem that you've got in insurance fraud. We can't arrest everybody that gets put in front of them. They can't do it because of resource and loads of other things as well. And similarly, we can't fight fraud on every single case that comes in front of us. In that sense, we will do our best to mitigate it, but sometimes we may not run a case that might have otherwise been run by other people. It depends on appetite and things like that. So I've made up here. I sort of did a big long list of things that I thought was that I thought were relevant to try and help me articulate what we are looking for when we put things together. I've called them the 5 Ps. There may be more. This may be the new thing that everyone talks about, or it might be the last time you ever see this again. But I quite like the idea. There is a need for us to protect. So there is a need for us to, some of you will be aware on the call, we've had a couple of cases where we have helped defend third parties from the mess they've got themselves into with other other parties at play in an insurance claim. And we've stepped in and said, not only are we going to protect the customer, NFU mutual customer, not only are we going to protect our funds, but we're also going to do a bit of work to protect the third party who's got themselves an awful mess with a rather a dodgy solicitor and a rather dodgy credit hire agreement. And we made a decision to protect that person and take them out of the mess that they got themselves in for. And again, so there's, that might be a reason why we do take a case over not taking a case. We could have just paid out and just got rid of it and left the third party to it, but we made a decision to do something different. And it's not just the first time we've done it. We've done it with a couple of cases now. Punish, yes, we do. We had a case quite recently. Again, some of you know this case, where award-winning case, no less, Operation Kansas, where a third party was deliberately reversing into the blind side of reversing lone females in Asda car parks. Bizarre setup, but basically we caught him and we took him all the way, did him for contempt, and he got 10 months in prison at Christmas time, which I thought was brilliant. So we do, and that cost a lot of money. That's quite a painful one for the money wise. We're not going to get it back. Prudence, yeah, we are looking at the money here. We are looking at pounds, shillings and pence in old school, and we sometimes make commercial decisions where we think, well, we are not going to get some money back, but we're still going to run it. Or we may say, we're not going to get any money back, we're throwing good money after bad. Is there other ways to mitigate this one? Prevent, some of you know, we do have a very large commercial book where we're dealing. I always say this, if you've eaten a ready meal, we probably insured it going across your table. Field to fork is the phrase they say. So we cover most food that gets moved around Britain, most of it, and a lot of the transport that moves it around, and a lot of the supermarkets where it ends up. We ensure we've had something to do with that. And in those workforces, we have had linked and organised where they've been targeting and insured. They've had one slip on a yellow pipe on a farm yard, and suddenly there's 20 people slipping over the same yellow pipe. So we do things to prevent. We will take action to make it stand out and say, look, don't fight us. So there are reasons why we might take cases that perhaps we wouldn't have done otherwise, but it's because it's to send a message rather than just pay out and get rid of it. And the last one is promote. I do like a good war story. I do like a good case. Joe Public seemed to like it. Internally, when we publish stuff, it gets good responses. So we do like to promote that, and I think as an industry we should do more. So those are sort of my 5 Ps, as it were, that help us think about why we are running a case, or why we might not be our ambition. And then all this is sort of how this is what we have to tell our people to think about when they are taking cases. And again, there isn't like a checklist we can do. Every case is different. You will know that. Do you want to do the next slide, please? Thank you. Okay, and so the other thing, from a business point of view, we have to look at the resource. So we tell our people what to do. We like to do that, but then as a business, we have to look at our the number of bums on seats, for want of a better phrase, of who we've got there. We have finite investigative resources. We can't keep going after things. We can't keep putting a camera on somebody for surveillance. We have to prioritize our portfolio. That we've got a lot of cases and we can't service them 24/7 all the time. You've got exactly the same challenges, I know that. And so we have to prioritize things. We have to find a sweet spot for managing things, doing the right things as best we can. But sometimes we have to say, look, we can't keep running this case. So there's some challenges because of resource. Not a great one to swallow, that one, but does happen. Also, strategically, so sometimes we would go, okay, well, there's a fraud ring growing. We really want to throw some resource at that. So therefore, might help us to run a claim more than others. And then it does mean that we have to move resource away from other areas and have to make decisions on that basis. We do like to have consistency in our decision making, so there is sort of a level of that. And across the sort of the teams that I work with, there is an understanding that there's a finite to what we can do here, and they're working very hard to balance, as it were, the managers, not necessarily the handlers. It's not really their core, but the managers are sort of trying to balance the books on who does what, when, and how. And clearly, we want results. Where there's clear evidence of fraud, we would want to run a claim. But as you're all experts, you will know that there's an awful lot of very grey in between, and it's decision making, that we have to build into that. And the last thing I put on there is a long-term effectiveness. We have to show to the powers that be that every pound we spend, we are getting bang for buck or more. And that is just very recently we've been called in to discuss some of the work we've been doing. I won't exactly say what it was, but there was a real long, hard discussion about, well, why are we spending all this money? Can't we just do something else to deal with that problem? And so we have to show that we're not just leaking money and we're never winning anything. We have to show results with what we're doing for the long-term effectiveness of what we are doing, to show we're a long-term viable, not just a quick fix approach. Next slide, please. And the last one I want to put in there is I'd be a remiss, and you'd probably think, well, it's not Phillips if he's not talking about the customer at the mutual. NFU Mutual, we have to talk about our customer, and there's all various reasons why we want to engage with the customer about why we might be taking a case or why we might not be taking a case, and we do listen to them. So we deal, as I said before, with some very large scale companies, and we deal with individuals. And we have to think about their resource, because some of them have finite resource. We were talking this morning about a case of running a case of a night shift, and we're having to pull a couple of people off the night shift who are witnesses. Well, we forget. We think, well, we just have to come the next day, but we forget that they're night shift people, and that's what they've done most of their life. We're getting to work during the day. But the employer's got to not only take care of them during the day, but also at night and the night after, because of the way night shifts work. And that's not something that we can demand that they do. And they might turn around and say, sorry, we just can't let these people come to you because we can't afford for the business to do that. I have to say, I've not yet met one of our customers who hasn't said, from one of the large corporate companies, who have not said, we will release the people for this. It hasn't happened yet. But on smaller entities, I remember dealing with an artisan baker. Only the mutual could cover an artisan baker, couldn't they? But everybody in the room was a witness, and there's 5 of them. They're all family members, and they're all finding it really difficult to take time away from their work because they were their business. They worked 24/7, and we were dragging 3 of them off for a trial. So we have to see it from their point of view. Not just, and I put it on there, not just the customers. We also have to think about the witness as well. We can't force them into court. Most of the time, a lot of the people on the call work with us and know how to sort of codger along and bring along those witnesses. So that helps. You're very good at that. And put on there about our appetite to help to protect. Some of our customers really, I have met some individuals who really didn't want to know and didn't see why it was their needs to get involved. And that sometimes is a challenge. The other thing I'd also say about this one is about their appetite. When, I don't know if people understand and know how this works, but in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, the premium that we charge, particularly large corporate insurers, is derived in some extent, I won't go into too much, but to some extent by the reserve we have outstanding. So if we've got cases outstanding for a long time, it does impact their premium. And there is often a call about why is this claim still outstanding after so many years, because trials drag on and all the rest of it. And sometimes customers will say, well, I'd rather just not, because it's affecting my premium and I don't care what you do, but just help me reduce my premium, please. So we have to take into account their appetite for these sort of things as well. I'm making it sound really harsh and horrible, but there's a lot of negotiation goes on here and balancing people's up. The other thing is we have with a lot of our customers is we have to manage their expectations on things as well. I dealt with a claim years ago, and the customer was absolutely brilliant. And in one of the counsel, we were using counsel at the time, and he said, I've just gone on, had a chat with this bloke on the quiet. He said, but I don't think you should run it. He said, because I challenged him about something, and he just flipped. And he said, I did it deliberately to see how he would behave, and he behaved really badly. And then we had to go back and speak to the customer, and the customer said, yeah, that's how I'm going to, if I get asked this question, that's how I'm going to behave in front of a judge. I'm paraphrasing what he said. So we then decided, well, it's probably not a good one to go in, because he's just going to wind everybody up. He's got a thought. He won't change his mind about this. Doesn't matter what we do. And sometimes we get customers and they just cannot see that we aren't going to get a fraud out of this claim. So we have to, work with them to say it's just not possible, unless there's a really good reason why we would or would not run it. Yes, can you do the next slide, please? So I'm conscious of time. So putting all those things together, I put the 5 Ps down, which sort of help our people understand what's going on. That sort of sets out our appetite. How do we feel about things? Sort of top-down driven, ideally. So we sort of try and enforce that. We're trying to protect, look after. We look after the money, look after all those kind of things. We then have to look after the portfolio of the case. So it's sort of where are we going to spend our resource? Where are we going to prioritize things? We don't forget the customer. We put them at the heart of everything we do at NFU Mutual, and I'm sure everybody else in the industry would do the same. And you have to listen to them and also the witnesses involved. And then it's a balancing act of why we would run a claim or not run a claim to court. And I'm very keen. A lot of people know that I'm constantly asked this question: is there a sweet spot when you can keep going and it's not going to get any worse, or is there a sweet spot to pull out before the damage is done and find other ways to deal with the claim? And those are sort of, I just put that forward as sort of like the 3 main things that we would want to talk about when we're considering whether we're going to run a fraud claim or not. And clearly, I'm putting aside things like evidence, as long as the evidence is there and it's strong, but we then have to consider all the other points that sit behind the evidence and what have you as well. And I just put a little bit on the bottom there. Just, anybody know what a Moscow is? Some people may, or some people may not. I said I wouldn't be interactive, and I apologise. I lied. So it's what must we do? Could we do? Should we do? Would we do? Would we not do? And that is a lot of discussion goes on about we must do things. We should do things. We could do things. There's an element of we won't do things, and certainly there are times when we've had to make decisions that it's just not the right case for NFU Mutual on occasions. And some of you on the call have known that we've had those discussions when they've been tough decisions. So that was my talk about why we might. I've been sort of a very whistle-stop tour because I was then given another 2 questions by Jeffrey also to fit in as well. You're getting your money's worth from me. So I'm going to quickly talk about surveillance. The question I think was, is it still effective? Don't worry, Damien. I was at something with Damien last week, and he did this. I thought I could sit there and just pinch all Damien's stuff, but I haven't done. Don't worry, Damien.
Good job. I made it all up. So
I know. I could have done. Could have saved my time. So what I've thought about surveillance is, it continues to be a powerful tool. It's a fantastic tool. I love surveillance. NFU Mutual, when all the troubles were going on about surveillance about 10, 15 years ago, we stuck with it. We were one of the companies where our supplier said, we're so glad that you've got the way that you do things in place because it means you kept going. We didn't stop. We didn't falter. In my view, we don't do enough sometimes. I think we could do more of it. But what we are becoming very aware of is it's becoming very much an area that claimants are very much aware of now, and they like to challenge it. So it is becoming almost like you've got your evidence, and then you have to worry about what defence are they going to run up, rather than saying good day, bad day. That used to be the old school type thing. But now we're now facing quite regularly now questions about lawlessness, proportionality, data handling, data completeness. Evidence of they not only want the video, they want the sound recording of the people in the vehicle discussing the case. They want how it was all put together, which quite frankly I don't care about. I'm more than happy that we will play ball by that way, but it just makes a lot of work for us. They are looking for any chinks in the armor, any poorly managed surveillance setups. Our supplier recently went to DEMS, which is a digital. I can't remember what it stands for now, but basically recording everything digital, not having everything on memory sticks and SD cards. So we went for a rigmarole of just agreeing, accepting that this is the way it's going to go. But the claimants' lobby decided they would have a go at that and try and find a chink in the armour, which they didn't do, touch wood, because we were fairly strong on that. There's also a lot of issues about reputation, about how this might be used. I will pinch a phrase you said, Damien, which I liked, which we don't want to appear the bad guys when we're using this stuff. We're doing it for the right reasons, and we don't want to appear the bad guys, because judges will spin very quickly if they think you're appearing to be the bad guy by using the in the way that you've pulled together surveillance. But what I find is proper governance, proper discussions, proper use, proper oversight. That integrity bit just is your big shield for defending you on these sort of cases. And touch wood, we've always been fairly robust on that. The most recent one we had, a nonsense one, we surveyed somebody who said that they needed to wear gloves all the time and they couldn't do X, Y, and Z, and we caught them, surprise, without wearing gloves on a cold day, and had to go off. They defended their actions. Their defence was that we digitally removed the gloves from the picture. So we had to spend an enormous amount of time saying that that's just not possible. Just drives me mad. But that's the sort of thing we're coming across now. Challenges about AI, as I say, people saying, well, that's AI, that wasn't me. So there's going to be a whole lot of that. I know the police went through it with video evidence of people just saying, well, prove it was me. That's not my twin brother. That's not me, whatever. So again, we need to have robust, strong, just stick to our guns, be absolutely sure of what we're trying to do with it. Managing it well, I just think that runs all the core like a stick of rock. It manages all the way through it, and having that integrity. If you get it wrong, just taints the whole case. I do love a case with surveillance. And if anyone's seen the IFED, the one that was on the lady was on Jeremy Kyle the day after she'd said she had an accident with us, and then we caught her walking around buying some walking sticks and then throwing her walking sticks away before she went into the medical report and afterwards. So yes, we love surveillance. So that was again, I'm just very quickly, evidential value is huge. We take a risk-based approach. We don't stick it on everything. We have to look at the value, like everything, timing, all those sort of things. But I will maintain it produces great results. Not going to shirk away from using it. And then last slide, I think, was you asked about AI and deep fakes and shallow fakes and what have you. I was going to start off with I said, I'll just go and ask AI to create a stupid picture and you can all laugh about someone. I did this yesterday, Monday, and the prompt was a picture of the person slipping over on some paving stones at a garden centre. That's all I gave it. That's almost like an NFU mutual customer, and it's even spelt centre correctly, not American. That woman's got all 5 fingers, not 6. I showed this to my wife. She couldn't believe the quality of that, and it won't take long before this gets even better. No, it's not my wife, although she spends an inordinate amount of money and time in garden centres. So that I joke, but this is getting better and better. It's an arms race, it's becoming an arms race, and we need to be aware of that. Are we worried about it? Of course we are, but it's a good story. There's a good Disney ending coming up. I'm going to tell you about in a minute. So we also have to think about this as a little bit. We can be a bit indifferent about this. So we always look at things from not from an injury point of view. I know it's completely different, but I thought I'd mention this from an AI perspective. We have to be thinking about for salute, collateral lies. A lot of what people are producing, we go for, don't really make any difference to us because we would have paid the claim anyway, or whatever. So we are aware of people producing their own stuff at home, and we just have to balance out would it have affected our decision anyway, because I know the FOS will take dim views of these things sometimes, and we have seen that. I'll end on the good note here is I just think we need to not worry about AI because it is such a great thing for us. So we're all worrying about what the fraudsters might doing it. We are really turning it on and finding fraud with AI, and it's a good thing. It allows, I was talking today about using eyeball Mark 1. I maintain that all the way along. We're never going to be eyeball Mark 1, but eyeball Mark 1 can't look at 20,000 bits of posted in an hour, whereas AI can. And we are turning our attention to documents and fakeability and all the rest of it. And yes, I think we've got we're getting ahead of the game slightly on this. It'll be ups and downs on it. We are getting better. We are getting quicker, but it just makes our world more efficient and more plausible about how we can work through things very, very quickly. So yes, it is a problem. Yes, things are becoming more and more challenging in some senses, but less and less in others, because we can process stuff so much better. And that was me. I was going to give it sort of a few minutes for questions. If you want to do the last slide, I then asked AI to. I'm talking to a bunch of lawyers and insurer experts. What might they be like at the end of this Teams call? And this is what it gave me. So I weren't far off, all giving me the thumbs up and clapping. So thank you for that. Any questions? Thank you for your time, and I hope that was sort of useful to some extent about what goes through our minds when we're talking about some of this stuff.